20 years after alien monsters invaded Earth, the final day of humanity's resistance arrived. As Earth faced its ultimate destruction, the last survivors prepared for battle. The Dragon Emperor, Kabuna, declared to the warriors that the only way to end the war was to eliminate the ruler of the alien species. He urged them to sacrifice their last moments for the sake of humanity. However, before they could act, the alien ruler spoke briefly before unleashing a devastating force. The ground shattered into pieces and countless people perished from a single attack. Our protagonist, Lee Do-hyuk, overwhelmed with fury, cursed the ruler and prepared to charge forward to kill it, but Kabuna stopped him. That was when Do-hyuk noticed Kabuna's severed arm, but Kabuna dismissed his concern, insisting that he was fine. He explained that defeating the ruler was impossible with humanity's current strength and that their only option now was to resort to a final method. A woman then stepped forward and revealed the Stone of Space-Time Regression, humanity's last hope, discovered at the end of the 20-year war. She reminded them that the stone's power allowed one person to regress to the past. Kabuna explained that only one individual could use it, and if there was anyone who had to go back, it had to be Lee Do-hyuk. He reminded Do-hyuk of his title as the Genius Hunter of the Century, assuring him that he was capable of succeeding. The woman placed the stone in his hands, emphasizing that the fate of 8 billion people depended on him. Though reluctant, Do-hyuk had no choice but to accept. Activating the stone, he made a promise. If he succeeded, they would meet again with smiles. As the stone unleashed a powerful energy, a blinding light engulfed him. The woman watched his lifeless body and expressed a strange sense of relief. Kabuna responded that, with Do-hyuk now carrying the burden alone, their role had ended. However, the woman reminded them that they still had unfinished business, the alien ruler. She insisted that they should fight one last time, and the others agreed. With determination, they launched forward for one final struggle. In a peaceful city, Lee Do-hyuk awoke to the blaring sound of an alarm clock. Jolting upright in shock, he tumbled out of bed. As he opened his eyes, confusion overwhelmed him. The surroundings felt familiar. Thoughts raced through his mind as he questioned whether he had returned to his old apartment and whether he had succeeded. Relief flooded him as he realized that he had returned to the optimal moment in time. He calculated that 7 months remained before the alien invasion. Until then, he needed to strengthen his frail body and stockpile supplies in preparation for the catastrophe. Determined, he grabbed his coat, aware that the lives of 8 billion people rested on his shoulders. Stepping onto the street, he vowed to awaken at the earliest possible moment during the first outbreak. Until then, rigorous training would be necessary to ensure that his body could withstand the awakening process. 7 months later, at Bukhansan, standing at the designated location, Do-hyuk waited, knowing that the critical moment had arrived. In precisely 1 minute and 30 seconds, a wormhole would form in Bukhansan. Though his body remained far from its peak condition, he had at least met the minimum physical requirements. In 1 minute, a wormhole would open in the rock ahead, and with its creation, an enormous amount of mana would pour out. Like a baptism, it would forcibly open the human body and imprint the awakening circuit, a pathway for mana, onto it. Yet the real problem was the alien species vanguard that would appear alongside the wormhole. He recalled that in Korea's case, the first wave of alien creatures consisted of giant ants and quad cockroaches. In his prime, they had been nothing more than insignificant obstacles. Yet for newly awakened hunters, even 5 or 6 would struggle to defeat just one. Despite this, Do-hyuk remained confident that his experience would allow him to overcome them. He began the countdown. At the final second, he positioned himself and prepared for the wormhole's emergence. Shouting in anticipation, he braced for impact, only to be met with silence. The only sound that reached his ears was the call of a nearby bird. Confusion set in as he realized that nothing had happened. He considered the possibility of a 10-second margin of error and decided to wait a little longer. 10 hours later. Night had fallen and rain poured down as Do-hyuk remained in position. He questioned what had gone wrong. 10 hours had passed, and still, the wormhole had not appeared. Considering the possibility of a miscalculation, he decided to return the following day. However, tomorrow turned into a week, and still, nothing happened. An elderly man passing by noticed him and curiously asked what he was doing there. His companion, however, dismissed the question, remarking that the young man looked unstable and suggesting they continue on their way. A month later, Lee Do-hyuk was still sitting in Bukhansan. Over time, people began taking pictures with him, recognizing him as the famous Bukhansan statue man. As half a year passed, news outlets reported on him, describing him as an ascetic who had been meditating at Bukhansan for 6 months. Parents of students even began making wishes in his presence. One day, his younger sibling recognized him on TV and asked their mother if the man in the news was really her brother. Shocked, their mother demanded an explanation, wondering what on earth he was doing there. The world remained unexpectedly peaceful, and after a long wait of 3 more months, Lee Do-hyuk, once known as humanity's savior, became a day laborer. Titles such as Lone Wolf, Demon Fighter, Copy Ninja X Kashi, Genius, first dominant species slayer, god of war, and one of the 9 heroes had once been used to describe him during his 10 years as a hunter. And finally, savior. Yet, despite all of that, he now found himself labeled a mere day laborer. The realization embarrassed him, making him wonder how he could ever face the others. For the past 6 months, no matter how long he waited, the outbreak never happened. There were no alien species, no awakened individuals with supernatural abilities, nothing. This meant that none of it existed in the world he now found himself in. In the end, Do-hyuk had to accept that this was a different Earth from the one he knew. Although the concepts of the multiverse and parallel worlds had been widely discussed, he never imagined he would experience it firsthand. Still, he acknowledged that the lack of an outbreak was ultimately a good thing for the people of this world. Even if it meant that all of his efforts, along with those of the resistance group, had been in vain, this was how things should be. Taking a deep breath, he felt the peaceful air around him and thought that perhaps he should take the time to enjoy that peace for a while. However, just as he embraced the tranquility, his phone vibrated with a message. Checking it, he saw a notification from the bank stating that his loan payment of 2,138,465 won was scheduled for withdrawal on July 30th. Moments later, another message from Peace Capital informed him that his loan was overdue. Before he could process it, yet another notification from a different bank arrived, leaving him speechless. Later at home, his younger sister, Lee Jian, called him over and told him to sit down with her for a moment. Annoyed, he asked what it was now, but Jian fired back, demanding to know what he had been up to lately. She questioned where he had been running off to all the time despite being unemployed. Recalling his actions over the past year, she reminded him that he had been buying gas masks and all sorts of strange supplies. Then, with suspicion in her voice, she asked if he had gotten involved in a pyramid scheme. Frustrated, she shouted that a year ago he had suddenly left the Gosiwon, claiming the world was ending, and had gone on to hoard tens of millions of won worth of supplies in the basement. She demanded to know if he had any idea how worried their mother had been. Do-hyuk remained silent, unable to argue. Guilt weighed on him. He truly hadn't known that the world would end so peacefully either. The scene shifts to the past. Kabuna had instructed him to borrow as much money as he could, from any source available. When Do-hyuk asked why, Kabuna simply told him that it didn't matter whether it was from banks or loan sharks. He needed to secure every possible resource to prepare for the outbreak. When Do-hyuk asked what would happen next, Kabuna had dismissed the concern, stating that once the outbreak occurred, the world would be finished. No one in their right mind would come to collect debts in a world that no longer existed. That was the plan. But now, with the world still standing and showing no signs of an impending apocalypse, Do-hyuk realized that he was stuck with all the money he had borrowed. Accepting his fate, he teared up as Jian continued to scold him, demanding to know what exactly he was so proud of. Jian then voiced her suspicion that he had been doing day labor to pay off what she still believed were pyramid scheme products. Sighing, she told him that she would pay him a salary if he helped her with her internet broadcasting instead. Confused, he asked if she was referring to the strange thing she wore on her head, to which she nodded. She explained that she needed to beat a 2-player game and required his assistance. He hesitated, telling her that he had never done anything like it before, but she reassured him, saying that he would adapt quickly. After all, he had always been good at sports and other physical activities. Since he was the only one she could ask, she insisted that he help her. Still skeptical, he asked how much she even made from internet broadcasting. Nonchalantly, she replied that she earned 1,500. Shocked, he demanded clarification, and she proudly declared that after just a few months of streaming, she was now making 15 million won per month. Without hesitation, she offered to give him half of her earnings. A short while later, Jian asked if he was ready to dive into the game, and he responded affirmatively. And so, for the time being, Lee Do-hyuk, the former savior of humanity, decided to become his younger sister's assistant. With excitement, Jian shouted that they should dive in, and together they entered It Kills 2, a game set in a world where they would have to farm, fight enemies, and survive the ultra-difficult adventure horror mode known as the Newbie's Grave. As the system activated, a notification appeared, confirming that they had arrived and that the game had begun. As they moved forward, John reminded Do-hyuk to stay close while their viewers continued to flood the chat with comments. Do-hyuk glanced around, wondering if the atmosphere was supposed to be frightening. Instead, he found himself thinking that the house in front of them looked like the perfect place for a good night's sleep. Jian clung tightly to his arm, trembling, and urged him to proceed cautiously. He agreed, advising her to follow carefully. As they slowly entered the house, the viewers were impressed by how casually they walked in, treating the ominous setting as if it were nothing. Do-hyuk stepped onto the first stair when a system message suddenly appeared in front of him. The message explained that, after receiving a letter from his missing ex-wife, his character, along with his current wife, had arrived at the abandoned house where the ex-wife had disappeared. Without paying much attention, he swiped the message away, thinking it was just an unnecessary distraction. Jian immediately grabbed his face and hair in frustration, questioning whether he had lost his mind. She scolded him for skipping the tutorial, especially in a game that was already difficult. He quickly apologized, explaining that the message had been in the way, so he had clicked without thinking. Jian, still frustrated, blamed herself for trusting a beginner, causing the viewers to burst into laughter. Turning back to the audience, she asked for tips, admitting that she hadn't checked a single guide. Some viewers jokingly suggested that the best way to learn was by dying, while others provided more practical advice, telling them to farm for weapons, search for clues, use flashbangs, and remember that only a few weapons worked against the boss, making escape their best option. Several users warned her that the difficulty setting was crucial and emphasized that no matter what, they should avoid choosing reality mode. Jian's expression turned pale as the system displayed a new message confirming that difficulty selection had been completed. The game had been set to reality mode. Panic set in as she immediately pinned Do-hyuk against the door, demanding to know what he had done and why this was happening to her. He explained that all he had done was touch the doorknob to check if it was unlocked when another strange prompt appeared. The chat erupted with laughter, with viewers joking that their dynamic resembled a sitcom. Others commented on how entertaining it was to watch Repair Chu, Jian's streaming nickname, struggling through the game. Meanwhile, Jian let out a horrified scream upon realizing that over 1,000,000 won was now riding on their success. The system displayed 2 mission requests from viewers. One from a user named Lipshu, offering a 1,000,000 won reward for clearing reality mode in 3 attempts within the remaining 48 minutes, and another from Guardian Chu, offering 500,000 won for simply clearing the mode, with no limit on attempts. Jian quickly regained her composure and declared that they had no choice but to proceed. Do-hyuk confidently agreed, stating that despair was a luxury they couldn't afford. Viewers laughed, commenting that money was the best cure for despair. Without hesitation, he opened the door. A dead body suddenly fell, hanging directly in front of them. Jian let out a terrified scream. One of the viewers advised them to check behind the corpse, noting that there should be a hand axe and a pistol hidden there. Since Jian was too frightened to move, Do-hyuk followed the tip and retrieved the weapons. Without much thought, he tossed the pistol to Jian, only to be met with immediate regret as she panicked and protested that she was terrible with guns. Amused, he questioned whether she was more comfortable with a hand axe and informed her that she would need to face enemies directly. Turning away in frustration, she muttered that her dream had always been to become a gunslinger. Before the conversation could continue, a neck hugger lunged at them. Jian screamed in horror, instinctively covering herself. Do-hyuk reacted instantly, leaping forward and grabbing the creature's arm mid-attack. Viewers were stunned, unable to believe that he had just blocked the neck hugger's strike with a single hand. In one swift motion, he swung the axe, severing the creature's arm. A shriek of pain echoed through the house as he immediately shoved the severed limb into its mouth. Before they could recover, more neck huggers emerged, rushing toward them all at once. Do-hyuk simply narrowed his eyes. The moment they drew close, he lunged forward, slashing through them at an incredible speed. In mere moments, the creatures had been cut into pieces, their bodies collapsing to the ground in an instant. The chat exploded with reactions. Some viewers called his performance insane, while others questioned whether they had really just witnessed it happen in real time. Do-hyuk exhaled in relief and turned to check on Jian, expecting her to still be terrified. Without warning, she raised the pistol and shot him. The system immediately displayed a message stating that the mission had failed because Lee Do-hyuk had died. A prompt appeared, asking whether they would like to restart. Jian rushed to his side, frantically apologizing and insisting that it had been a mistake. A viewer with the username Military Middle School Girl donated 1,000 won. In a high-class apartment, Black Orcs, a horror game specialist streamer, shouted to his viewers that he couldn't believe Do-hyuk had taken down a neck hugger that easily. He told his supporters that even in reality mode, his limit was 2 neck huggers, but Do-hyuk had taken down 4 with just a hand axe. He then asked what Do-hyuk's name was again. Meanwhile, in Fun Dive, Do-hyuk and Jian respawned in front of the house. Jian apologized to him, swearing that it had really been a mistake, but he remained silent in anger while the viewers couldn't stop laughing, noticing that he was clearly pissed. After a moment, he told Jian that it was fine, and that it had been his mistake, which touched her. However, he then angrily added that he should have never given a gun to an idiot like her, making her apologize again and swear that she would do better next time. He told her that there would be no next time for her, and ordered her to follow him because they would move quickly. She agreed, but muttered that they should see how well he did without her. A few minutes later, he slashed through the neck huggers again without breaking a sweat, all while holding Jian in one arm. The viewers laughed when they noticed that Jian wasn't moving, which made him even faster. He then proudly asked if she had seen it and told her that he could handle fights alone, so they would divide roles for the next part. She was confused, but he simply told her that he would handle firearms, melee combat, item farming, and scouting while twisting the door open. She asked what she was supposed to do, and he told her to shut up and cheer. She cursed at him angrily and reminded him that it was her game, but he ignored her and simply told her that they were moving in now. The viewers laughed even more, realizing that this was a forced bus ride. He opened the door and was immediately met with Brute, the mid-boss of It Kills 2. Jian, startled, accidentally pushed him forward in fear and shouted that it was there. He was forced forward just as Brute launched toward them. He shouted at her, calling her an idiot, but she only apologized while the viewers laughed, thinking it was another team kill. Fortunately, he managed to dodge Brute's attack and knock off its balance while shouting for it to go down. When it collapsed, he immediately jumped behind it, launched his axe, and stabbed it in the head, knowing that compared to the monsters he had fought before, this was nothing. The viewers questioned why he was treating Brute like a chew toy, pointing out that its thick skin should be impenetrable by a hand axe. As Brute raised its hand to grab him, he shouted that if it didn't work, he would make it work. He then kicked the axe deeper into its head, piercing straight through its skull and out from its neck. The viewers couldn't believe that he had taken it down. Brute collapsed to the ground, dead. User Lipshu donated 1,000 won and asked if they had really seen that correctly. Jian, still in shock, stammered that she didn't know. Do-hyuk read through the comments and saw that many viewers were saying this was the first time they had ever seen someone kill Brute with a hand axe. Some claimed that Brute wasn't even supposed to be killable that way. He asked why not, stating that it hadn't been that difficult. The viewers responded that normally, only veteran players could kill it after stacking firepower and suffering through sheer desperation. One of the viewers then questioned whether he was really a newbie. Jean responded that her brother was, in fact, a newbie. Another viewer then challenged them to prove it by showing their status window. Jean agreed and told him to open it. He followed the request and displayed his play history. The data showed that he had only played for 6.6 hours, with a total status of 134. Everyone was shocked when they confirmed that he hadn't even played for a full day. They then noticed his detailed stats and were amazed, realizing that most new players, even professional athletes, started with around 125, while 140 was considered the human limit. His detailed stats all ranked within the top 0.01%, surprising the viewers even more. Some began questioning if he was a cyborg. He smiled, realizing that all the training to prepare for the apocalypse was finally paying off. Meanwhile, Jian teared up beside him, wondering how much they had worked him in that scam group, and how a body could even reach that level. She then burst into loud cries, asking if he had even been eating properly while he was there. Surprised, he asked what was wrong with her, but she only swore that from now on, she would treat him well. The system then displayed a notification showing that Black Orc had donated 10,000 won, with a comment saying that what he had just witnessed was insane. Jian, startled by the name, asked if it was really Black Orc, the famous horror streamer. Other viewers were equally amazed, commenting that the first person to unlock a hidden route in It Kills 2 had just appeared. Do-hyuk, confused, asked what they meant by a hidden route. One viewer explained that normally brutes were supposed to capture the player and move the story forward, but Black Orc had been the first to kill one, unlocking a hidden path. However, it had taken him 7 brutal attempts using every weapon available. Do-hyuk responded that not everyone was good at games, then asked if he was right in assuming that if someone wasn't good at the game, something like that could happen. The viewers laughed, commenting on how he was the only person who could get away with calling Black Orc bad at games. On the other hand, Black Orc, who was watching the stream, let out an awkward laugh at Do-hyuk's words. He couldn't believe that someone who had never played this game before, or even used Full Dive VR, had taken down a brute with nothing but a hand axe. Originally, he had planned to watch for a bit and then log off, but he decided he might as well turn this into content. Black Orc then donated another 10,000 won and asked if he could give them a mission if it wasn't too much trouble, mentioning that he was just trying to have some fun while streaming. Jian asked what kind of mission it was, and Black Orc proposed a 1 million won challenge to clear the game using only a hand axe, with no other weapons allowed, and a time limit of 48 minutes. He also added that he would be streaming it legally. Jian, overwhelmed with excitement, immediately agreed. Do-hyuk agreed just as quickly, but the viewers expressed concern. They pointed out that clearing the game with only a hand axe would be extremely difficult. The game didn't just have humanoid enemies. There were all sorts of monsters, which meant that attempting to defeat them all with such a small weapon was essentially the same as saying it was impossible to clear the game at all. Black Orc reconsidered and admitted that the hand axe restriction might be too much. He asked if they would prefer a crowbar or a chainsaw instead. Before he could finalize the change, Do-hyuk clicked yes, and the system immediately announced that the mission was successful. Black Orc followed up by donating 1 million won. Jian, furious, demanded to know what he had just done. Stammering, he explained that it was a mistake. He had meant to press the accept button for the hand axe mission but had accidentally hit the success button instead. Without hesitating, he grabbed Jean and rushed forward, kicking open the next door. Shouting with determination, he declared that now that it had come to this, he was going to complete the mission no matter what. John, panicking, yelled at him to stop his madness. They soon encountered a Grande, the second mid-boss monster, known for its terrifying speed and ability to rip players apart. Black Orc knew that a Grande's chainsaw arm inflicted near-fatal damage upon a single hit, and that its attack patterns were incredibly fast. Normally, one teammate would provide suppression fire to stun it while the rest of the team targeted its weak points. This balance of attack and aggro was the official Egrande strategy, making a two-player party mandatory for survival. Black Orc donated 10,000 won again, asking what kind of insane playstyle he was witnessing. Do-hyuk swung his hand axe and slashed at Egrande's feet, making it scream in pain. He then turned to face it again, wondering what a set strategy even meant. Back in his time, if they had no weapons, they fought with their bare teeth, and if no method existed, they created one, no matter what it took. Among all those hunters, he had been the best at killing monsters. He questioned what value a so-called official strategy could possibly have when it came from just 5 years of full-dive VR history. Compared to the grand monster strategies he had built over 20 years of war, it was nothing more than a child's playbook. Egrande turned back toward him, revving its chainsaw arm before swinging it down at him. Do-hyuk barely dodged in time, bending his body at the last moment to avoid the strike. Aware of its speed, he quickly countered by slashing its foot again, knowing that the key was to destroy the source of its mobility. With precision, he delivered a powerful kick to Egrande, determined to take away its balance and speed. He knew that once those were gone, the final move would be to strike a humanoid monster's ultimate weak spot, the neck. Egrande let out a furious scream but struggled to stand. Seeing his opportunity, Do-hyuk dashed forward, swinging his axe straight at its neck. However, he was caught off guard when Egrande managed to block the attack with its arm, causing the axe to get stuck. Before he could react, Egrande furiously swung its chainsaw arm at him. Jian, watching in panic, called out his name in fear. He managed to jump in time, avoiding Egrande's attack. He then pinned Egrande's chainsaw with a powerful kick, but instead, he was thrown across the room and slammed into the wall, unable to break through Egrande's defense. Despite this, he remained calm, simply remarking that Egrande was a bit tricky. A moment later, he successfully killed Egrande using only a hand axe. Jian excitedly shouted that they had done it and that they had won, while the viewers commented that it was hilarious how he had called Egrande a bit tricky right before defeating it in a one-shot kill. Chu then donated 10,000 won, asking how he had done it. He casually replied that it was easier than they thought and explained that by analyzing the direction of Egrande's pivot foot and the movement of its muscles, then targeting the leg that stopped to concentrate power during an attack, he was able to shut down Egrande's speed. He added that by reading the muscle movements of the leading shoulder and the texture of the arm muscles before the attack, they could predict the timing and direction of the strike. After that, they would only need to dodge, just as he had done earlier, and land a powerful counterattack. The viewers laughed at his explanation, telling him that such precise movements were something only he could pull off. He simply responded that it was easy, leading the viewers to joke that if he could do that, he might as well be able to dodge bullets too. He casually replied that dodging bullets was even easier since gunfire moved in a straight line, so they could avoid it by watching the muzzle direction. If dodging wasn't possible, he suggested that they should just block it with an axe, causing the viewers to burst into laughter, commenting that even if he explained it, only he would be capable of pulling it off. Jian then pointed to the side, mentioning that there was a way down. He was surprised and told her to wait for a second, which made the viewers ask if it was time for rush. As they walked down the stairs, he informed the viewers that there wasn't much time, so he would explain the details as they went. However, Jian suddenly pointed out another axe, making the viewers remember that defeating Egrande rewarded players with a submachine gun and a hand axe. He proudly told everyone that back in the day, he had used dual axes to take down multiple monsters. Before he could finish his thought, Jian suddenly screamed for him to look behind him. When he turned, he saw a swarm of enhanced zombies rushing toward them. The zombies lunged at them, but he quickly reacted, blocking one of them with his axe before swinging his weapon and decapitating it. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, dual hand axes in motion, cutting off the zombies' heads one after another. The viewers questioned if the supposedly enhanced zombies were actually made of tofu, wondering why they were getting sliced apart so easily. He dodged a zombie's sharp claws while replying that it wasn't as hard as they thought, reminding them that all they needed to do was dodge with a simple swish, gather all their strength, and strike the weak point of a humanoid, the neck. He demonstrated by swiftly slashing through another zombie's neck. As more zombies surrounded him, the viewers became concerned, questioning what was happening with the difficulty. Normally, there were only about 10 of them, yet dozens of zombies were appearing. Some speculated that even Do-hyuk might struggle. Still focused on fighting, he continued cutting off the zombies' heads and casually asked the viewers if they wanted him to put in a little more effort. Without waiting for an answer, he opens his arms and spins non-stop, effortlessly decapitating the enemies. The viewers watched in shock, asking if he was using whirlwind. After wiping out the entire swarm, he suddenly rushed to the side and vomited from dizziness. The viewers burst into laughter, teasing him for getting motion sickness from his own whirlwind attack. One viewer jokingly told him to stop messing around in an action game and just play Rise of Valhalla instead. Confused, he asked if that was a different game. Before the conversation could continue, Jian suddenly shouted for him to look at something she was holding. She explained that she had found a clue about the serum needed to counter the monster crisis. She added that it was difficult to read due to the bloodstains, but according to the notebook, the cause of all the mutations, from neck huggers to zombies, was a type of mutant strain. She then asked if he remembered the trailer near the house they had seen earlier, to which he replied that he did. She explained that according to the notes, the serum capable of curing the mutant strain was located inside that trailer. If they retrieved it and dispersed it through the mansion's sprinkler system, the mutants would all weaken at once. He then read a comment mentioning that without the serum, the game's difficulty would spike dramatically starting from the next boss, making things extremely tough. However, he remained unfazed, remarking that it didn't seem that hard to him. He then casually asked if they should just skip it, which made Jian panic and question why he would even consider that, worrying about what would happen if he failed. He simply responded that going all the way there was a hassle. Black Orc then requested a 100,001 mission, challenging them to clear the next boss without using the serum within a 48-minute time limit. Do-hyuk confidently accepted, stating that if that was what Black Orc wanted, he would do it. Jian responded by saying that she expected nothing less from an educated person, making the viewers laugh and call them the slaves of capitalism, the sibling duo that gets serious when money is involved. Suddenly, the floor cracked beneath them, leading Do-hyuk to assume they were supposed to go down. Excitedly, he told Jian to hop onto his back, which she did while trying to calm him down. Ignoring her, he jumped down and landed in the water below, causing Jian to scream in fear. The system displayed a message indicating that they had arrived at the sewer labyrinth. John, covering her nose, asked what the terrible smell was, but Do-hyuk remained silent, lost in memories. The scent reminded him of the time he had practically lived in underground sewers to escape the alien species. Jian, disgusted, suddenly screamed upon spotting a rat. Do-hyuk, on the other hand, felt relieved to see a sewer rat again, thinking that if he made soup with it, the broth would be amazing. However, his thoughts were interrupted when a group of giant rats appeared. Instead of reacting with fear, he dashed forward excitedly, thinking that giant rats meant even better meat. The sudden aggression shocked the rats. Effortlessly, he chopped the giant rats into pieces, proudly announcing that he had obtained the most delicious rat hind leg. He shouted bon appetit and prepared to bite into the raw giant rat meat when Jian screamed in horror, calling him a crazy bastard and demanding to know why he was about to eat it. Before he could take a bite, a massive stone suddenly flew in and knocked the meat from his hand. Turning his gaze, he saw the Chaos, a late-game boss creature known for its tentacle arms and powerful regeneration. One of the viewers questioned what the hell it was and why it had appeared so early when they weren't even in a boss room. Jian, stuttering, asked why there were two bosses and shouted at Do-hyuk to run. The viewers began wondering if the game was bugged or if the difficulty settings were broken. While everyone else panicked, Do-hyuk shouted in despair over his lost rat meat, frantically searching for it in the dirty water. He continued lamenting, saying that he had been looking forward to eating junk food for once. Suddenly, his expression darkened as he angrily turned to the bosses, demanding to know how they dared to take his rat meat. He declared that he wouldn't let it slide. The viewers questioned whether he was seriously mad about not being able to eat rat meat and jokingly asked if he was part of the Silmito Special Forces or something. One of the monsters attempted to squeeze him to death, but he jumped away just in time to dodge the attack. Jian shouted that this was getting to be too much, complaining that strange bug-like things kept happening to them. Meanwhile, Black Orc, who was watching, commented that in reality mode, the game's initial difficulty was determined based on the player's stats. Since Do-hyuk's stats had far surpassed the game's limit rank, it was likely the reason for the extreme difficulty spikes. Black Orc then donated 1,001, remarking that this was probably why such things kept happening. At that moment, one of the bosses landed a punch, sending Do-hyuk slamming into the wall. The viewers questioned whether throwing in two chaos creatures at once was a bit too much. As they debated, one of the bosses suddenly launched its tentacles at Do-hyuk. Fortunately, he managed to jump away just in time, shouting that he was fine. Without hesitation, he dashed forward and began slicing through the boss's tentacles, hacking them into pieces while declaring that now the fight was getting interesting. One of the viewers commented that Do-hyuk's mindset was insane, but warned that it was still too early to lower their guard. The chaos creature had incredible regeneration, meaning small damage healed instantly. Worse, the moment it was attacked, it would begin a poison gas attack. As predicted, Chaos immediately released a cloud of poison gas. Jian, caught in the blast as well, screamed that they were poisoned and that they only had 10 minutes left. The Chaos then attempted to punch him, but he dodged. He quickly slashed off its hand and cut through its leg while shouting that if it kept regenerating, they just had to keep smashing it until it couldn't regenerate anymore. He then severed its head, but it instantly regenerated its head, hand, and leg at the same time with incredible speed. The creature suddenly leaped in Jian's direction, making her scream in fear, while the other Chaos launched its tentacles at him. He glanced at the comments and read that Chaos had infinite regeneration unless its heart was destroyed, making him wonder if the heart was its core. The chaos attempted to grab him, but he easily sliced off its arm. He then follows up with a powerful kick to its head, forcing it down. Without giving it a chance, he slashed open its chest and pinned it to the ground, causing it to scream in pain. Without a second thought, he forcefully ripped its chest open with his hands, shouting that if the heart was its weakness, he would tear it out and crush it himself. The chaos let out a piercing scream. The other chaos, hearing its companion's cry, immediately jumped toward them and launched its sharp tentacles. The attack pierced through, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Jian called out to her brother in fear, but it wasn't Do-hyuk who had been struck. He had managed to jump away just in time, making the chaos kill its own kind. The viewers couldn't believe what had just happened, questioning if he had planned from the start to lure its attack into destroying the other one's heart. The remaining chaos, enraged, rushed at him, but he leaped into the air and stabbed his axe straight into its head. He then swung his axe again, striking its chest and piercing through its heart, instantly killing it. The comment section broke as viewers flooded it with messages of shock and amazement. Jian was just as stunned, unable to believe that her brother was this strong. The system then displayed a notification that the Chaos mission had been successfully cleared. Jian, now fully energized, excitedly told the viewers that after witnessing such a legendary match, they should feel like giving something in return. The viewers, knowing that it was time for the donation declaration, immediately began sending in donations. Almost all of them contributed large amounts, still overwhelmed by the incredible battle they had just witnessed. Jian, seeing the donations pouring in, thanked the viewers and mentioned that she would use the money to buy meat with her brother. Meanwhile, Do-hyuk stood behind her, equally amazed, staring at the screen in disbelief as he processed the sheer amount of donations. He found himself wondering if all of it was really money and how much they had actually made today. Jian then turned to him and asked what he wanted to do next, suggesting that they continue playing. He replied that they had already been at it for 8 hours, so they should stop there. The viewers immediately protested, asking if they were really abandoning them. They called him cruel and insisted that he should continue for at least 18 hours. However, he simply responded that he was starting to lose focus. Since it was his first time in VR, he was also feeling a bit dizzy. Realizing they had no choice, the viewers reluctantly accepted it, telling him that next time they should go for a longer session. He agreed, assuring them that he would be back to finish the rest. Jian then said goodbye to the viewers, and they both logged out, leaving the audience still commenting and desperately trying to stop them. Meanwhile, Black Orc sat in silence, still unable to believe what he had just watched. He questioned who this person even was. As he thought about it more, he began to wonder what it would be like if Do-hyuk played other games. If his skills in It Kills 2 were already this insane, then any game he played was guaranteed to be a hit, an absolute blockbuster for sure. Without wasting another second, Black Orc stood up, knowing there was no time to hesitate. Do-hyuk was drawing all the attention toward him. Meanwhile, in their house, Jian excitedly shouted that it was amazing and demanded to know how he had done it. Swinging the pan she was holding repeatedly, she attempted to copy his movements, commenting that he looked like someone who had used dual axes his entire life. He dodged the pan swinging dangerously close to him and shouted at her to cut it out before she accidentally hit him. He then added that this was exactly why she couldn't get a boyfriend. Feeling attacked, she aimed the pan at him in frustration and yelled that she had dated plenty of guys and was totally a hot girl. He simply called her a lifelong loner and stated that imaginary relationships didn't count. Jian eventually calmed down and, with a more serious expression, asked him how he had pulled it off earlier. To her, he had looked like some crazy guy on steroids. He casually replied that he had just done it, and it had worked. She groaned, calling it a disgusting natural talent. Letting out a sigh, she admitted that he had always been ridiculously athletic since childhood. If only it hadn't been for that fortune teller back then, the one who had told their parents that Do-hyuk had the fate to save the world. Their parents had taken the prophecy far too seriously. No matter how desperately his physical education teachers had pleaded throughout his school years, insisting that Do-hyuk's brain was just for decoration and that his true potential lay in sports, his parents had stubbornly refused to listen. They had angrily pushed the teachers away, demanding how they dared to speak that way to the future Secretary General. Jian stared at him for a moment, thinking that if their parents had just listened to the teacher back then, Do-hyuk probably would have won an Olympic medal or something. But she also knew that their parents regretted it every single day. Deciding to ignore the past, she instead asked him why he didn't start streaming properly, considering how things had turned out. He asked if she was seriously talking to him. She asked him in return if he had actually seen the viewers' reactions today, reminding him that if he played like that every time, he wouldn't even need to talk. Just showing his gameplay would make him insanely popular. Do-hyuk knew he hadn't felt that kind of thrill in a long time. Before his regression, he had spent over a decade in constant battles. If he didn't kill the alien species in front of him, he would be the one to die. But now, all he did was work and go to construction sites. There was no stimulation, just an endlessly dull routine. He was dying of boredom. He then realized that virtual reality battles felt almost real. It was thrilling enough to break that monotony. Clenching his fist, he reminded himself that it wasn't like he actually missed those disastrous times. It was just that the virtual game was seriously fun. Jian, noticing his expression, excitedly asked if he was going to do it. He replied that he needed to pay off his debt first, so he would think about it a little more. Jian immediately argued that this was exactly why he should stream more, pointing out that with the game missions he had completed today, including the bonus from Black Orc, he had made over 3 million won in a single day. Do-hyuk shot up from his seat in shock and disbelief. His loan debt would be paid off in no time at this rate. Jian, now lounging on the sofa like a boss, smirked and told him that they should do it properly. She then asked if he even had the money to buy a capsule. He replied that he could only trust his dear little sister's credit card. Jian eagerly agreed, confidently stating that she would buy the capsule herself. Impressed, he praised her for being so cool and playfully called her milky white-skinned Li Jian. Just as she was about to click the purchase button, a message notification interrupted her. She opened it, and her eyes widened in shock. She immediately shouted for Do-hyuk to look, causing him to panic and ask if the capsules had sold out. Holding up her phone, she revealed that Black Orc had sent them a message. Confused, Do-hyuk asked if she was talking about the Black Orc, the guy who had unlocked the It Kills hidden route first. Jian confirmed it and explained that the famous game streamer Black Orc wanted to collaborate with him. Shocked, Do-hyuk demanded to know what she meant by collaboration and asked if she was insane. Raising his voice, he immediately rejected the idea, declaring that there was no way he would agree to a collaboration. Jian, baffled, questioned why not. Black Orc was an incredibly famous streamer, and with just one collaboration, Do-hyuk's viewership would skyrocket. He snapped back, demanding that she shut up and stop using a capsule as bait to force him into collabing with some guy. Covering himself as if protecting his dignity, he dramatically declared that while he respected Black Orc's gender identity, he personally liked women. He then covered his face in mock tears, asking her if she was truly so obsessed with views that she would sacrifice his purity. Jian, now completely pissed, wondered if she should just kill her damn brother. The next day, the delivery men arrived and completed the capsule installation in their house before saying goodbye. Do-hyuk, now sporting bruises on his face, sat there in silence, calling himself an idiot. He questioned whether he had really thought that kind of collaboration was what Black Orc had meant. Closing the door behind him, he let out a sigh. Since he had already decided to stream, it was time to take it seriously. He then sat down in the high-end capsule, purchased with Jian's credit card on a 12-month installment plan. Recalling Jian's words, he remembered that she had said it was necessary for future streaming and had even added extra convenience features. The total price had come to 20 million won. He turned on the capsule, knowing that he and Jian had bickered since they were kids, but deep down, she had a soft heart. He swore to himself that he would make tons of money with the capsule and buy her lots of presents too. As the capsule began its game search, he looked at the list in front of him and decided to try playing in game mode instead of reality mode. Swiping through the options, he thought that if he picked a game where he could fully utilize his near-superhuman specs, maybe he could satisfy the craving that It Kills couldn't fulfill. He saw several decent games but quickly noticed that anything that looked good cost at least $200 or more. Frustrated, he sighed, realizing that since he was broke, he would have to pick one of the cheapest options. His eyes then landed on Ultimate Fighter FD, a fighting game he had played as a kid. Excited to see that they had made a full-dive version of it, he immediately recognized it as the nostalgic superhuman fighting game Ultifight. Even better, it was only $20. Without hesitation, he bought it and entered the game lobby. The system then prompted him to set a nickname. Without thinking much, he used his old one. The system successfully registered it. Before jumping into a match, he decided to check his physical status. Testing his power, he punched the ground, causing it to explode from the force of his explosive fist technique. He then tested his rapid strikes, a high-speed attack, and his wolf fang technique. He wondered if this was the max capability in game mode. He noticed that while it wasn't quite at the level of being called superhuman like before, it was still beyond normal human limits. He then considered whether this was the highest level an average person could handle, since any faster than this, normal perception wouldn't be able to keep up. Deciding that it was time for a real match now that he had warmed up, he ordered the system to search for a ranked game. However, the system informed him that he didn't meet the level requirements for ranked matchmaking. Remembering the game's rules, he instead ordered the system to search for public rooms. As the system began loading, he figured he might as well pick a character to play. Meanwhile, inside a ranked game, a lady slashed an enemy with a single strike as her viewers cheered, calling her big sister's Sword Princess. She then landed another one-shot kill and won the match. Her name was Dark Sword Girl Harang, also known as Sword Princess. A one-year-old streamer with a solid fan base, she averaged 2,000 viewers per stream. Excitedly, she announced to her viewers that the mission was complete and that she had just won 50,000 won for her victory. One of the viewers, unfamiliar with her, asked who she was and why she was so good at Ultifight. A fan quickly donated 1,000 won, questioning how the viewer could be a newbie who didn't even know who Sword Princess was. The fan then explained that Ultifight FD was once a game famous enough to have a world championship, and Dark Sword Girl had once gone by the name Sword Princess, ranking among the top players in Ultifight. Laughing, she told her fanboy to stop hyping her up, explaining that it had been ages since she quit playing Ultifight professionally, so it was understandable that not everyone knew her. She then added that these days, Iron Fist was far more popular than Ultifight, which her viewers agreed with, knowing that most players had already switched over. She then told her viewers that since she was already in Ultifight after so long, they should hurry and find the next match. She ordered the system to search for a ranked room with settings similar to ranked mode. The system processed her request and found a match, but the estimated wait time was 9 minutes. Surprised, she commented that the wait was way too long. She then asked the system for another match, only for it to reply that the next one had a 12-minute wait time, frustrating her as she realized it would mess up her streaming pace. A viewer named Spider-Girl then donated 1,001, suggesting that she do a public match mission in the meantime. She responded that it sounded like a good idea since the ranked queue was slow. Moments later, Spider-Girl submitted another mission, this time a 100,001 challenge to win 5 consecutive matches within 12 minutes. Surprised by the amount, she told Spider-Girl that 5 wins in a row might be a bit tough and asked if they could cut her some slack. The viewers agreed with her, knowing that since Ultifight had declined, only hardcore veterans remained, making public matches a hellhole filled with top players who enjoyed bullying beginners. Other viewers added that it had become the ultimate hunting ground for old pros farming newbies, and even reminded her that Sword Princess got wrecked by a top player last time. This made her angry, and she shouted that it was only because she wasn't using her main character while Bottego had used his. The viewers dismissed her explanation as an excuse, making her even more frustrated. Annoyed, she declared that it was time for her alternate character. She switched to Wanderer, Yater, and confidently told her viewers that this time, she would show them what true seal clubbing looked like. She ordered the system to create a public room titled 1 vs 1 Showdown, Ultifight, Beginners Only. The system followed her command and transported her to the public room, which was set in the iconic Ultifight volcano map. The first challenger appeared, Night Warrior Hoken, the twin-fisted black dragon, who was ranked around platinum. She recognized Hoken as a fighter with easy inputs and solid performance. The character's controls were simple, yet effective, which kept him ranked among the top 3 most popular characters in Ultifight. As the match began, Hoken jumped and launched a powerful fist attack. She recognized it as his special move, Rush Attack with Black Flame Strikes. Anticipating the attack, she jumped and successfully avoided it, landing on the ground. She noted that close-range fights favored martial artists, and against martial artists, a mage's basic strategy was to maintain distance first. She cast a spell into her staff, and the bright energy radiating from it forced Hoken to cover his face. She then threw her staff, striking Hoken directly on the nose. He recoiled in confusion, questioning what kind of magic that was, since it was nothing more than a staff throw. Before he could react, she suddenly appeared in front of him, grabbed his arm, forcefully pulled it, and then slammed him hard onto the ground, calling it physical therapy magic. The viewers laughed as they realized the move's animation was copied straight from Hoken's own grab technique. Retrieving her staff, she told him that physical therapy magic was just the setup, as the real activation required time. The viewers became excited when they saw Mage Yitter's ultimate move, Meteor Summon, beginning to charge. She laughed as Hoken screamed in fear, running away while shouting that it was too much. The viewers continued laughing, entertained by the spectacle. She released the meteor, sending it crashing toward Hoken while teasingly bidding him farewell, remarking that maybe next time, he would be born as an old pro. The impact burned Hoken to death as he cursed her, while the viewers laughed and teased him for his exaggerated reaction. With an easy victory, the system restored the arena. She was glad that her first opponent hadn't been too strong, and her viewers agreed. She then decided to hurry and complete the 5-win streak mission and ordered the system to summon the next challenger. The system complied, and the next opponent was revealed. Meta character Steve. The viewers immediately recognized him, knowing that Steve was a beginner-only character. The viewers then asked if Dohyok's information was set to private because they couldn't see his character history. He bent down and began jumping repeatedly in the same spot, making the viewers wonder what he was doing. He then tapped the arena floor, leading them to think he was insane and acting like a total noob. She noticed that he truly looked like a beginner and questioned if it was okay to beat up someone new to the game while he remained distracted, staring excitedly at the lava. The viewers told her to protect the newbie and stop bullying him, to which she smirked and replied that she wanted to protect the newbie too, but she had to complete the mission. She hadn't expected a complete beginner to show up, prompting the viewers to tell her to say that without smirking and remind her that she was the one who wrote only true beginners in the match settings. The system then displayed the Get Ready message, making her shout for the game to start. The viewers told her to go easy on him because the newbie might cry, noting that it had been a while since they had seen a complete beginner. When the countdown reached 2 seconds, Dohyok suddenly turned around and positioned his feet. As the countdown hit 1 second, the fight began, and he immediately dashed forward toward her. He launched his fist, which she easily dodged, teasingly stating that if she could dodge Hoken's charge, a newbie's charge was nothing. However, he stopped himself from falling, pushed himself back using his hands, and suddenly appeared in front of her with incredible speed, aiming a punch at her face. His attack successfully landed. He followed up with rapid strikes, preventing her from counterattacking. The system displayed perfect, and he stopped attacking, letting her collapse onto the ground. The viewers were in shock that a supposed newbie had just crushed a veteran. He looked down at his hand and commented that it felt good, making the viewers question what they had just witnessed. Round 2 began, and Sword Princess was revived, leaving Do-hyuk confused. The viewers laughed at her and teasingly pointed out that she had suffered a perfect defeat, losing to a newbie, which was the ultimate humiliation in ulti fight. She couldn't accept it and shouted at Do-hyuk to go again. She then asked her viewers if they agreed that she had lost only because she let her guard down, but they instead reminded her of what she had said after defeating her old rival. Sword Girl then donated 1,001 to teasingly remind her that she had once said, "Letting your guard down is part of skill." Frustrated, she pointed at Do-hyuk and questioned how he could possibly be a newbie, shouting that he must be a veteran in disguise. She then asked her viewers if they also believed Do-hyuk wasn't a beginner, and although they laughed, they ultimately agreed, impressed by his performance. Determined to redeem herself, she switched to Sword Girl Harang, her main character, and shouted at Do-hyuk that she would show him a perfect victory in reverse. The viewers became excited, knowing that she was finally bringing out the character that had earned her the title Sword Princess during her professional days. Social Distancing King donated 1,001, asking everyone to like the stream if they approved of Sword Princess immediately switching to Harang after getting crushed. The overwhelming approval left her embarrassed, and she furiously shouted at her viewers that if she played properly, she would win. Meanwhile, Do-hyuk remained quiet, simply watching her. She drew her sword and told her viewers that she was really angry now, urging them to say a prayer for Do-hyuk on her behalf because she was going into serious mode. As the countdown began, she analyzed his skill level. She could tell that Do-hyuk wasn't at Ultifight's highest rank, Transcendent, and at most, he was likely Upper Diamond or Lower Master. Among all ranks, there were only 100 Transcendents, including herself. Based on his fighting style, which was subtly different from standard Ultifight techniques, she was convinced he was a top-tier player from another game who had recently joined Ultifight. As the match started, she positioned her foot and dashed toward him, declaring that she would show him what true control meant. She swung her sword at his head, but he lowered his upper body just in time to evade the strike. He then launched his fist forward. She confidently claimed that she wouldn't fall for it this time, yet he grabbed her sword-wielding hand and delivered a punch with his other fist. She tried to protest, but he ignored her and struck her face. He followed up with rapid strikes again, leaving her no room to escape. Defeated, she cried out that she was dead. The viewers were amazed and laughed at her for being completely destroyed just like before. As in the first round, he stopped attacking when the system displayed perfect, allowing her to collapse. The viewers commented that she wasn't a sword princess but more like a sword baby. Refusing to give up, she was determined to restore her pride and challenged him again. However, just like in the first and second rounds, she was hopelessly defeated. He won the match while she begged him to spare her. He turned around, pleased that he had achieved a clean 5-win streak, while Sword Princess revived behind him. He thought that her early staff character had been easy to deal with, but things had become slightly tricky when she switched to a sword and used some unusual skills near the end. He reminded himself that he had entered game mode intending to experiment with psychic abilities. However, since he had skipped the tutorial out of habit, he had no idea how to activate them and hadn't been able to use any during the match. He clenched his fist, recalling that he had even attempted to use his old mana sensing abilities just in case, but they hadn't worked at all. Deciding that he would definitely complete the tutorial next time, he reaffirmed his goal of reliving his old psychic powers. Just then, he noticed Sword Princess reviving. Curious, he asked her if she was back and inquired about her tier, noting that she had been pretty good earlier. She spoke furiously, but he couldn't hear her. He asked what she was saying and told her that he couldn't hear anything. She continued speaking, but he still couldn't make out her words, making him guess that the communication blocking function had been turned on to focus on the game. If that were the case, they wouldn't be able to hear him either. Sword Princess signaled for him to come closer and pulled out her sword. A system notification popped up above his head, showing that Sword Princess was requesting a revenge match, startling him. He wondered what he should do, knowing that he needed to leave. Turning around, he told her to enjoy her game, thinking that he should hurry and look up how to activate game skills. She looked surprised and tried to say something again, but he noticed she kept repeating the same words. Based on her mouth movements, he guessed that she was asking for his nickname to add him as a friend. He replied that his nickname was, but then realized that, just like before, she might not be able to hear him. The system displayed his nickname to Sword Princess, stunning her. In shock, she shouted and called him a bastard, but he had already logged out, leaving her in despair and swearing that she would definitely find him. The viewers laughed as she furiously questioned how such a jerk could exist and how he dared to ignore her. User Dungchat explained donated 1001, explaining that player 2 wasn't ignoring her. They pointed out that if it was a newly created account, the default setting was mute mode, meaning he might not have heard her at all because he never turned it off. Angrily, she responded that there was no way that was possible because everyone saw what happened in the last match. She reminded them that she had used Harang's signature skill, Dance of Death. Yet a beginner dodged all of it before taking down Harang, even while she had the skill activated. She then asked her viewers if they really believed an ulti-fight newbie could defeat her in one hit, insisting that Do-hyuk must be either an ex-pro who had come specifically to target her, a former top-tier amateur from ulti-fight's golden age, or a current professional player hiding his identity. Her viewers reacted with curiosity, asking if she was referring to Anatol, which caught her off guard. She knew Anatol as the legendary player of Ultimate Fighter, widely considered the greatest of all time. However, she was certain that Do-hyuk wasn't Anatol because rather than being textbook perfect like Anatol, she couldn't read Do-hyuk's pattern at all. It was as if there was no set pattern to his moves. The idea seemed impossible to her. If that were truly the case, it would mean Do-hyuk was reacting to her movements in real time, something beyond the realm of gaming. A player like that shouldn't exist. She told her viewers not to try to stop her because she was determined to find Do-hyuk and make him quit gaming forever. The viewers mocked her, calling her pathetic sword girl. Meat-eating vegan donated 1,000 won, commenting on how Sword Girl had been completely destroyed while using her main character. A few hours later, Do-hyuk was back in the lobby, checking if this was his 14th match. He ordered the system to display his total record, and the system confirmed. 14 matches, 14 wins, and 0 losses. He acknowledged that, aside from the first match, the overall player level had been low. Even in ranked games, his opponents so far had left fatal openings after just 1 or 2 feints. However, since he was now in diamond rank, he knew there were still 2 more ranks above. Once he reached the highest rank, he expected to find more interesting opponents. Deciding to add the first player he fought, he submitted a friend request to Sword Girl, thinking that she had been pretty good compared to his other opponents. He wondered if she would accept the request. Just then, the system notified him that Jian had invited him to It Kill 2, leaving him momentarily confused. Realizing that he had forgotten about his scheduled stream with Jian, he quickly accepted the invite, knowing that he needed to hurry since it was already 8 p.m. He entered the It Kill 2 lobby with Jian, exciting their viewers. Jian greeted everyone warmly, saying it was nice to see them again. One of the viewers asked if the person behind her was the axe murderer. She laughed and clarified that the guy who looked exactly like a murderer was actually her brother. However, seeing his annoyed reaction, she quickly corrected herself, declaring that her dear brother was, in fact, the famous It Kills axe murderer. Confused, he asked what she meant by axe murderer. She explained that his previous It Kills gameplay had gone viral on all the forums. Excitedly, she asked the viewers what today's content would be, hyping them up. The viewers responded enthusiastically, asking her to announce it. She then turned to Do-hyuk, shouting at him to hold up an axe and raise his arm. Confused, he complied. She dramatically declared that today's stream was Teacher Do-hyuk's Axe of Madness show, featuring his run through It Kill 2. Jian asked the viewers if they remembered when they had stopped while hunting chaos last time. The viewers responded that they remembered and were excited to see it live again. Jian then informed them that they were attempting to clear It Kills 2, which they had failed to finish previously, further fueling their anticipation. She then turned to Do-hyuk to tell him they should get started, but was shocked when he suddenly launched his axe at her. She called him a crazy bastard and questioned what was wrong with him. The axe, however, flew past her head and struck a monster lurking behind her. Both of them realized that the creature was a special sucker. The viewers, equally shocked, began questioning what those creatures were doing there. Do-hyuk immediately dashed forward, informing Jian that he would take care of the mobs first. One of the suckers lunged at him, extending its sharp claws, but before it could strike, he grabbed its head and ripped it off while simultaneously swinging his axe with his other hand. 2 more suckers rushed at him together and one managed to strike at him with its claws. He dodged just in time and beheaded it with a clean axe strike. The remaining sucker, enraged by what had just happened, leaped at him aggressively. Without hesitation, Do-hyuk aimed at the severed head in his hand and threw it at the incoming creature, knocking it back. Shouting for them to die, he finished off the fallen sucker and then turned toward a group of suckers at his side. He jumped toward them, appearing suddenly in front of one of the creatures, shocking it before launching his axe and decapitating it with ease. Pulling his axe from the head of the sucker he had thrown earlier, he then asked the viewers confidently if they should finish off the remaining mobs. As the suckers charged at him together, one managed to get close enough to bite him from behind. Swinging his axe in a wide arc, he told the viewers they should continue where they had left off last time. Then, spinning with his axes, he unleashed his signature whirlwind attack, cutting through the swarm of suckers effortlessly while dashing forward. After eliminating all of them, he headed straight for the wall and vomited. The system displayed a donation from a viewer questioning why he was playing Diablo alone when they had asked for It Kills 2 gameplay. Another comment pointed out that he was still as motion sick as ever. Still recovering, Do-hyuk stuttered that he was fine and had gotten used to it. Looking around, he asked if he had taken out all the enemies. A viewer then reminded him that he had already killed them, questioning if he thought they were still alive. Do-hyuk remarked that the suckers didn't seem tough since they went down in one hit when he aimed for their weak spots. The viewers quickly explained that suckers usually didn't die so easily, even when hit with a grenade launcher. Another viewer further clarified that professionals took them down using knives because melee weapons inflicted longer hit stun, making him realize that the suckers were designed to be defeated exactly the way he had done, which explained why it had felt so easy. The viewers laughed, commenting that they couldn't fight head-on like he did. Sneaking up from behind and stabbing was their best strategy, and they questioned how he had managed to defeat 10 of them alone when they would need a grenade launcher just to handle 2. Do-hyuk simply pointed out that, from what he observed, the suckers always charged straight ahead. He asked why they couldn't just predict their movements, dodge, and slash them. Jian, watching him, sighed. She knew normal players couldn't do what he did. Do-hyuk wasn't usually this oblivious, but she wondered how a genius could ever understand the struggles of ordinary people. As Do-hyuk continued explaining to the viewers, Jian approached him, deciding not to dwell on the thought. As long as the stream was entertaining, it didn't matter. She then told him to stop explaining and move on to the next stage. He agreed, reminding the viewers to remember the slash-stab-swoosh technique, making them laugh. Meanwhile, in Ulti Fight, an armored character covered himself defensively, but Sword Princess did not stop. She dashed forward and swung her sword. The man blocked the attack and pushed her sword away. Activating his powers, he then countered with a punch while shouting for her to die. She jumped away in time, causing him to hit the ground. She then questioned why he didn't die instead. The man was horrified as she activated her Dance of Death technique, executing a flawless sequence of attacks and securing victory. After the match, she sheathed her sword and told her viewers that her opponent had been a bit tricky. They agreed, but she knew the truth. He had been a transcendent rank player. The fact that Dance of Death had worked against such a high-tier opponent made her wonder why it had failed against the rude player from earlier. She questioned whether Do-hyuk was a current professional in Ulti Fight, a former professional, or perhaps someone from Iron Fist rather than Ulti Fight. One thing was certain. He was not an ordinary player. He could be among those competing for the title of the world's best, along with Anatol, the one and only GOAT of Ulti Fight. She smirked, convincing herself that someone of his level must have been genuinely curious about her skills. The viewers, confused, asked her what she was talking about and if she was still thinking about the player with the nickname, I guess that's it. At that moment, the system displayed a notification. She had received one friend request. She opened the message and casually mentioned to her viewers that she had a new friend request. The chat immediately filled with curiosity, asking who it was and why she looked so shocked. They noticed her trembling and pressed for an explanation. Instead of answering, she clenched her fists in rage. The chat continued questioning her reaction, but she gritted her teeth in frustration. Furious, she cursed aloud, swearing that Do-hyuk had even changed his nickname just to mock her. She vowed to find and defeat him. Meanwhile, in It Kills 2, Do-hyuk felt his ear itching. Jian noticed and asked what he was doing, urging him to hurry up. He apologized and jokingly asked if someone was bad-mouthing him since his ear was itching. Jian stopped in front of a large iron door and informed him that they were almost there. Beyond the door was the next boss. The viewers eagerly asked if it was finally the murderer and speculated that it would be amazing if there were 2 murderers. Jian remained confident, assuring them that this time she had thoroughly read the strategy guide. She then pressed a tile on the wall, triggering the iron door to open. Jian told him they should proceed and began walking up the stairs while explaining that once they climbed a little higher, they would reach the iron bars. Beyond those bars were numerous zombies, and among them was the last gatekeeper protecting the final boss, the murderer. As they looked ahead, the viewers began noticing something was off. The gatekeeper murderer was nowhere to be seen. Jian also realized that something was wrong, as the murderer should have been standing in the center, distinct from the zombies. Do-hyuk then noticed an old lady in a wheelchair, causing the viewers to panic and question why she was there. Jian immediately hid behind him in fear and stuttered out a name, Chloe. Do-hyuk, confused, asked if she was referring to the old lady. He then speculated that the old woman must be a boss monster, judging by Jian's reaction and the viewers' panic. He further guessed that Chloe was the first person infected with the mutant virus, which allowed her to control the other zombies. This reminded him of a past incident, where, after the outbreak, China had been divided into 6 countries, and one man had proclaimed himself a king in one of them. The man had awakened a zombie virus-like ability that allowed him to command infected people. Using that power, he had even dared to challenge Chen Tao, the strongest hunter in China, but was utterly crushed. That incident had confirmed that Transcendent-class hunters were immune to poisons and viruses. Smiling at the memory, Do-hyuk asked Jian if he was correct in assuming the old lady was the boss monster. The viewers, however, burst into laughter and teased him, telling him that Chloe was actually his ex-wife. Despite that, they confirmed that Chloe was indeed a boss monster. He stood there, stunned. Jian then explained that as far as she knew, if they didn't save Chloe within a certain time limit, she would continue aging due to the virus mutation. Do-hyuk asked if their clear time had been that slow, but Jian denied it, stating that they had actually progressed incredibly fast. She then turned to the viewers, asking how this had happened. The viewers responded that they didn't know either, speculating that the AI's difficulty settings had gone crazy. A donation notification popped up, with Only Watching Games donating 1,001 to suggest that they had forgotten to spray the serum. A wave of guilt washed over them as the viewers asked if they had skipped using the sprinkler system meant to slow down the infection's progress. Another viewer explained that typically, when taking the hidden route, players were supposed to spray the serum across the map using a sprinkler system. The viewers then called them capitalist slave siblings, mocking them for being too blinded by Block's mission reward to follow the proper steps. Both of them laughed awkwardly in embarrassment. The viewers pointed out that they had essentially skipped serum farming, maxed out the game's difficulty, and failed to slow Chloe's infection. However, they could have still acquired a vaccine later to cure her. Do-hyuk suddenly realized that he was the one responsible for Chloe's current state. The viewers playfully teased him, calling him an ex-wife killer for dooming Chloe. Still trying to process everything, he hesitantly asked if he was right in assuming Chloe was his ex-wife who had aged due to the virus mutation. However, now that things had reached this point, they had no choice but to defeat her. Confused, he questioned what kind of story this even was. Jian took the opportunity to explain further, asking the viewers if they were okay with spoilers. The viewers eagerly agreed. She then revealed that Chloe had originally been a researcher working on biochemical weapons within a military organization. The mutant strain responsible for the chaos had been developed by Chloe's organization as a bioterrorism weapon. However, Chloe had attempted to secretly steal the strain to sell it to a rival organization. She had been caught in the act and ended up hiding in the current location while being pursued by her original organization. In the process, she became infected with the mutant strain pathogen. Jian summarized that Chloe was both the culprit behind the outbreak and the root cause of all the events that followed. Since Chloe was the host of the mutant strain, eliminating her would put an end to everything. Do-hyuk acknowledged this and confirmed that essentially, if they got rid of Chloe, they would clear the game. Jian affirmed that was the case. Gripping his hand axes tightly, Do-hyuk told Jian to open the bars because they were going in immediately. Jian, feeling confident, responded with agreement and pressed the button on the side to unlock the gate. The iron bars began to open slowly as the viewers questioned whether the murderer would appear. Some asked veteran "It kills 2 players" for clarification, but even the experienced players admitted they had no idea, stating that they were noobs at this difficulty level as well. As the bars fully opened, Do-hyuk stepped forward and addressed the viewers. He declared that it was time to begin what they had all been waiting for, the Grand Acts of Madness show. The zombies rushed toward Do-hyuk, yet he effortlessly slashed one of their heads off, recognizing that this was the second enhanced zombie rush following the previous wave. As he swung his axes around, he proclaimed that if this were their last stand, then the final boss fight would be trivial. The viewers, however, countered that there were far too many enhanced zombies, at least twice as many as before, and noted that even a single bite could inflict debilitating status effects. Some expressed doubt that even someone as skilled as Do-hyuk could eliminate all the enemies and still defeat the final boss, Chloe, while others reminded the chat that he possessed the Pack Rush Killer move along with his ultimate skill, Whirlwind Charge. Busy slashing through the oncoming horde and decimating every zombie in his vicinity, Do-hyuk explained that the whirlwind technique was too risky to use consecutively in reality mode rather than in game mode. The viewers, recalling his susceptibility to motion sickness, teased him about his superhuman physique, yet propensity to become dizzy from spinning. Realizing that his primary objective was not to exterminate every zombie but to eliminate the final boss, he redirected his focus. With a swift kick to a nearby zombie, he leaped from one corpse to the next, rapidly advancing toward Chloe while urging the viewers that a shorter path would allow them to bypass the bulk of the enemies and target the boss directly. As he drew closer, Chloe activated her power. Rising abruptly, she emitted a piercing scream and unleashed a powerful shockwave that shattered half of the house into fragments. The viewers recognized this as her ultimate sonic attack, and speculated that Do-hyuk's attempt to kill the enemy might have backfired disastrously. Shortly after, a viewer's observation directed everyone's attention to a moving mass beneath a pile of fallen zombies. In response, Do-hyuk pushed aside the corpses and emerged, carrying Jian in his arms, remarking that the situation had been extremely close. The viewers were amazed, unable to believe he had managed to use the enhanced zombies as an impromptu shield to block Chloe's devastating attack. With Chloe's sonic attack having wiped out the remaining zombies, only the final boss now remained. Do-hyuk mused that if he had been more cautious of her earlier assault, he might have dispatched the final boss more swiftly. Yet one viewer reminded him that regardless of his skill, the final boss was not to be underestimated. Suddenly, dark slime began to ooze from Chloe's eyes and mouth. Chloe morphed into black-faced Chloe, a shifting mass of bacteria, and then another figure emerged, the final boss murderer. To everyone's astonishment, there were not 1 or 2, but 3 such murderers. Jian experienced a moment of panic as she struggled to comprehend the sudden appearance of multiple foes, questioning the logic of having 3 murderers when normally only one would appear alongside Chloe. The situation grew even more chaotic when a donation notification appeared, accompanied by a taunting remark from the AI, which claimed its sole purpose had been to destroy those who had overburdened it. The viewers laughed at the notion, agreeing that they too would be infuriated if they were the AI, especially considering that the game had been cleared without the use of a single round of AMD. The AI then challenged them to clear the game with just 2 axes. Amid the escalating chaos, Jian expressed her concern over how they were supposed to overcome the situation, noting that even if Chloe were not particularly difficult, the murderers were special entities with the added advantage of turning invisible during their attacks, making them exceptionally tricky to deal with. A donation soon followed, suggesting that the murderers should be shot with a gun to make their hit areas visible. However, another viewer quickly pointed out that such a method was impossible due to an active melee weapons-only mission. Both Do-hyuk and Jian silently acknowledged this limitation, though the suggestion briefly left them in stunned silence. Jian reached for her gun, contemplating the possibility of providing some backup with ranged fire, but before she could act, Do-hyuk grabbed the weapon and crushed it in a burst of frustration. He insisted that she abandon any unnecessary thoughts, reminding her that her inaction was, in fact, the most helpful course of action at that moment. Jian, hurt by his dismissive tone, argued that she was only trying to help, recalling the memory of a previous mistake that had resulted in a hole in his forehead, a mistake for which the viewers had humorously dubbed her the Team Kill Godslayer. Despite the teasing from the chat, the tension between them was palpable. After a brief pause, Do-hyuk softened his tone internally, recognizing that Jian was merely striving to contribute in her own way, even if the circumstances left little room for error. He then inquired about the grenades they had farmed earlier, and Jian confirmed that she still had one, displaying it confidently. Lifting a zombie corpse onto his shoulder, Do-hyuk explained that upon his signal, Jian should throw the grenade forward. Although Jian agreed and expressed her readiness, some viewers expressed doubts about whether she would remember to pull the pin. Jian defended her competence by asserting her familiarity with grenade handling, and despite the teasing remarks that followed regarding her intelligence, the pair prepared to move forward. Without further delay, Do-hyuk took a deep breath and stepped ahead, leaping and dashing forward while signaling Jian to be ready for what lay ahead. The murderers turned invisible and rushed toward Do-hyuk. He shouted to Jian, signaling her to act immediately. Jian pulled the pin and threw the grenade forward, but the viewers burst into laughter when the grenade stopped mid-air, directly above Do-hyuk of all places. It exploded, causing the murderers to reveal themselves and scream in pain. The viewers, now concerned, wondered if this was another instance of team killing. Jian screamed in fear, immediately apologizing and attempting to explain that her hand had slipped. As the smoke gradually cleared, Do-hyuk stood up, assuring everyone that he was fine. He then teasingly remarked that he had anticipated her failure, which was why he had grabbed a zombie corpse to use as a shield. Without having second thoughts, he jumped forward and launched his axe at one of the murderers. He successfully struck its eye, causing it to let out a pained scream. However, as he attacked, he was caught off guard by another murderer approaching from behind. The viewers frantically warned him to turn around, and he reacted just in time, forcing himself to rotate mid-air and barely avoiding the creature's bite. As he landed, he swung his axe backward and brought it down toward the murderer's head. But to his shock, the blade simply bounced off. He questioned why his axe couldn't penetrate, but before he could process the situation, another murderer in a semi-transparent form appeared behind him. Startled, he quickly leaped away, narrowly avoiding being bitten alive. The viewers noted that the murderer's invisibility function had returned, meaning they had recovered from the bomb damage. He was then knocked onto the ground but managed to stop himself before crashing into a wall. Some viewers explained that the murderer's invisibility broke when attacking or being attacked, while others remarked that the battle was becoming too intense and questioned how he was supposed to pierce their hardened scales with an axe. Do-hyuk responded that the situation was indeed troublesome, causing some viewers to assume that even he was starting to feel overwhelmed. However, he then clarified that it was troublesome only because it was more fun than he had expected. The viewers labeled him insane, while others proudly declared that this was the Do-hyuk they knew. Excited, he dashed forward, announcing that it was time to have some real fun. He quickly observed that the middle murderer couldn't turn invisible due to its damaged eye, while the other two had already begun fading away. He recalled that among alien species he had encountered before, some had the ability to alter their molecular structure to become transparent by allowing light to pass through their bodies. Compared to those creatures, he thought, these 3 snake-like murderers were nothing. Determined to recreate the feeling of eliminating those creatures from before, he closed his eyes but continued dashing forward. Despite his lack of vision, he sensed the presence of 2 murderers, one directly in front of him, preparing to attack. The viewers watched in disbelief as he effortlessly dodged its assault. Many questioned whether he was truly human and marveled at the kind of physical abilities he possessed. Seizing the opportunity, he rushed toward the eye-damaged murderer and swung his axe at its back. Some viewers doubted how he planned to break through its scales, especially since his previous attacks had failed. He admitted that he wasn't sure if the game had implemented a specific detail, but if the developers had paid attention to small mechanics, his plan should work. He then stabbed the axe into the opposite direction of the scale's growth, successfully piercing through it. He explained to the viewers that by targeting that weak spot, monster reptiles were essentially one-hit kills for him. Within moments, he slashed off the murderer's head. The viewers realized that only Do Hyuk could pull off such a maneuver. For most players, attempting it would result in instant death. Chloe, enraged by the murderer's defeat, let out a furious scream and attacked him with its tentacles. He skillfully dodged each incoming strike, but another murderer suddenly appeared from behind, ready to bite half of his body. Without hesitation, he swung his axe upward, stabbing the creature just above its mouth and slamming it into the ground. Without wasting a second, he forced his axes into its upper jaw and dragged the entire corpse over himself, using it as a shield against Chloe's next round of tentacle attacks. The viewers were in awe, exclaiming that the play was insane and wondering how his timing could be so perfect. Suddenly, the last murderer appeared directly behind him, its mouth wide open, ready to devour him whole. In an instant, its jaws snapped shut, but instead of biting Do Hyuk, it accidentally bit into the dead murderer's corpse instead. The viewers, now panicked, called out his name and begged him to still be alive. Fortunately, he jumped in time and coolly responded that a reptilian monster's greatest weaknesses were its mouth and the opposite direction of its back scales. The viewers, hyped up by his survival, praised him and began calling him the Godslayer. The murderer immediately spat out the corpse it had been biting and turned its focus back to Do Hyuk. However, it was too late. Before it could react, he slashed its belly open, cutting its body in half. The viewers erupted into cheers, some jokingly declaring their love for him despite being men. The last murderer collapsed onto the ground, completely dead. Now, only one enemy remained. The final boss, the bacterial colony, Chloe. Without wasting a second, Do Hyuk dashed forward, closing the distance between them. As he neared Chloe, he leaped into the air, raising his axe high. For the final time, he swung his axe down, announcing to the viewers that it was time to have some fun, one last time.